The trauma recovery process. So, an event happens, abuse, physical, sexual, emotional, public humiliation, an accident, whatever the trauma was, what happens is we get stuck. We stop in emotional time right there. It is so painful that shame enters as a protector. See, to experience the trauma when it's happening is just way too much. Emotionally, we can't handle and process everything that is coming at us. So shame enters, wraps that trauma up in a nice little bow, and puts itself away. See, shame, the pain of shame is like a dull ache. It slowly takes over your body like a cancer, where you just don't know why you can't feel good, why you can't feel good about yourself, why you can't show up for you, why you're in hiding, why you're sitting in fear. You see, it's a dull ache, and that protects us from the emotional pain of dealing with the trauma. We find ways to deal with that dull ache, that shame. For me, a lot of that was drinking and drugging. And man, did that really suppress the shame. I was able to show up in ways that I was never able to before. I could lose that social anxiety, that self-consciousness. I could talk to girls. I could get out my rage in bar fights. I was able to actually do things without endless thoughts of repercussions and pushback and what ifs. Like, it just shut that part of my brain off. What ends up happening is whatever addiction you find, whatever mood altering you find to deal with the shame that's protecting you from the trauma, eventually that starts to fail. And when that fails, the shame is compounded because now I'm an addict. I can't stop drinking. I've lost friends, family, money, jobs, business, whatever that addiction took away from you. You have now shame on top of shame on top of trauma. Trauma just gets put away and we avoid it. It gets stuck. It's not resolved. You see, if it's resolved, we don't have to deal with the shame. And then we don't need addictions to deal with the shame on top of that. So how do we resolve this trauma? You see, it's a memory, it's a feeling, it's an imprint. It is this emotional, unconscious awareness that there is something there that we just can't put our finger on. And this trauma has taken over our life in the way of shame and addiction. And we keep very far away. In a sense, we are running. As the shame takes over and we go into the addictions, and I've had many, it was just jumping from, one fire to the next. It was like, okay, yeah, let me just keep drinking for, 23 years because this is just numbing the pain. Then the pain of drinking became greater than it taking away the pain. So then I had to shift into something else. And then I would ride that for as long as I could until the bad feelings came back. And then I ran into something else. And I rode that out until it didn't give me that feeling anymore. And then one day I just ran out of things to try. Like, there was a part of me that knew there was nothing left. That no matter what I did or how I tried not to feel bad, it didn't work. So I never got off the couch because I was helpless, because there was a part of me that knew there was nothing outside of myself that was going to take the feelings away anymore. And I was stuck. And instead of mood altering the shame, I just sat in it. And the worthlessness of sitting in shame is paralyzing. See, we have to resolve the trauma. We couldn't wrap our brains around it. We couldn't put our emotions around it. We couldn't put ourselves in it because it was so great. Shame took over and we didn't even know it. And shame has been sitting with us for so long that we don't know there's anything else. You're stuck in this trauma. This memory just keeps spinning itself out day after day after day. It gets louder and it gets greater. And the greater it gets, the more the shame tries to protect you from it. See, what was saving us was the shame at the beginning and when we were young. What destroys us is the shame as we get older. Because that trauma, we give things attention that make us feel good. We put time and energy into things that make us happy. We ignore the things that we fear. And we don't even know, most of us, what the origin is. And we're terrified to go back and look at it. You see, if I don't resolve the trauma, it just keeps growing and spinning and growing and spinning. And it is this way of coping in life not to deal with it. How many times have you flown off the handle on a simple comment? So you were triggered because there's a protective layer that just reacts. To resolve trauma is to go into those memories that are not resolved and put away. We have to make peace with what happened. Nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to feel like shit. Nobody wants to re-experience any kind of abuse, any kind of humiliation, any kind of terror, any kind of panic. Why the hell would you want to put yourself in that situation? It defies logic. But that's where the healing is. You see, this thing is just buried so deep in me, but it controls every aspect of my life. From sun up to sundown, even in my dreams, it's running my life. It is making decisions on my behalf. I don't want those decisions making. I don't want the trauma to make those decisions. I want to be fully present to make educated choices in my life, not being pushed and pulled and twisted based on responses of fear and shame and abuse. See, trauma's been driving the car, and I've been a passenger. I need to kick trauma out of the front seat. I need to kick trauma out of the car. I need to start driving. I need to start taking control. I need to not fear what's underneath the shame and the humiliation. I need to befriend it. I need to own it. I need to hold its hand. I need to just beat the shit out of it, let it beat the shit out of me, and just duke it out for the last final time. I have to go into those memories that are in me that are not resolved. There's a peace that comes when you discover your wounds, your hurt, that hole inside of you that can't be filled. Watching people that I coach go to these places as I hold space, They're terrified when they come to me. And they sit there and they go through their story. And I can feel how hesitant they are and how afraid. But they show up because there's a part inside of them that is pushing up, that is pushing through the trauma, that is pushing through the shame, that is pushing through the fear, that is pushing through the self-hate, that needs to come out, that self-empowerment that is within us, in all of us, that has been buried out of fear. I have to feel what that felt like. I have to have those emotions again. I have to reprocess them as an adult. And I need to keep going back there as many times as is needed until I am comfortable going there and I can own that experience. And it doesn't hurt me anymore, and it doesn't drive me, and it doesn't push me. It doesn't make decisions for me. The only way to do that is to own it. Reprocess what you're afraid of. Get into that fear and that hurt and that pain and let it just kick your ass. Beat the shit out of you. Because at some point, it's going to run out of power. It's going to run out of energy. And you're going to take everything that it gave. And you're still going to be standing. And that's where your strength is. Your strength is allowing it to kick your ass until it runs out of power, until you can understand that it wasn't your fault, that you weren't responsible. The shame you are carrying is not your shame, it's your abuser's shame. You did nothing to deserve what happened to you. You were an innocent bystander who ended up taking on somebody else's shame. Because that's the only way we could have survived. You see, if I'm looking at the people who were supposed to care for me, and I see them in ways that doesn't make me feel safe, that is more fearful than handling the shame that came with it. It's not yours to carry anymore. You are strong enough and you are powerful enough to go into those feelings. Will take time. It's not like we go right to the wound, because that's just impossible. There is way too much emotional grieving that needs to happen down this path. I can't go to the bottom of it. I can't get to the core of it immediately. I would not survive. My nervous system would overload and my brain would probably explode. It would just be too much. So we just get a pinhole through the shame, through the hurt, through the pain, and we just prick that trauma with a pinhead. And we let out whatever comes out through that little pinhole. And then your body will close that pinhole up. You will have this huge emotional hangover. You will feel weak and exhausted and drained and tired. And slowly, within days or weeks, you will get your energy back. You will get your motivation back. You will start feeling lighter emotionally. Not carrying that extra trauma that you let out makes you feel lighter, more accessible, more present. And then as time goes on, it's going to rise up again. And we're going to go through the same process of letting it take us over, letting it kick our ass until it runs out of power. And what you're going to notice is the next time it wasn't as strong. And then you're going to do it a third time. And then it's going to come a fourth and a fifth and maybe 8 or 12 or 14. Nobody knows what that number is. But each time you experience it, it gets less powerful. it gets easier to handle. And it's going to get to a point where you're going to go back there for the 23rd time or the 9th time or whatever time it is, and you're going to be like, I have nothing left here to grieve. I can go back and recapture that story and not let it cripple me. That's when you become more powerful than the trauma. And then everything changes. Because you've proven to yourself, to your brain, to your bodies, to your cells, that you are stronger than your feelings and your emotions. And this process will repeat the rest of your life. Because, let's face it, at some point somebody's pissing you off somewhere. And you're going to have a reaction. But you're going to know how to deal with those reactions because you've gone to the worst of them within you. You will start to find this peace when you let out that energy and you grieve that trauma. You're basically taking that memory and reframing it in a different way. See, instead of, I'm worthless, if I was lovable, this wouldn't have happened to me. I caused this. I should have stood up for myself. I should have run. I should have did this. I should have did that. No. You did what you needed to do to survive. You didn't know any better. You couldn't have done anything, because if you could have done something differently, you would have. You couldn't. So you go back and you realize the truth of it, the reality of it, not what shame is telling you, not what your ego's telling you, what really happened. The truth and the reality. You were mistreated. You internalized it as you were worthless, useless, unlovable, whatever feelings had come up. And then you wrapped shame around it. And you carried it through the rest of your life, and you're fucking tired of it. How tired are you of carrying this? The only way is to resolve it. These are memories that need to be put away differently. We realize that we were powerless to do anything at that moment, and we have stayed stuck in powerlessness since then. It is time to take back your power. Don't let shame and trauma drive that car anymore. Get them out of the front seat. Putting yourself back there is going to be the hardest work you're ever going to do. It is going to be the most rewarding work you're going to do. It is going to take time. And it is going to hurt. But if you're not willing to do it, it's never going to get done. I was waiting for somebody to come and save me for a very long time. I finally showed up for myself. And so are you. Don't get down on yourself. Nobody does this work perfectly, and nobody does it quickly. And you are going to feel worse before you feel better, because you're going into what you need to feel, which is horrible, horrific, terrible emotions. If we were able to process them at the time they happened, shame would not have shown up, and we would have lived an easier life. We were not capable when it happened. It was too much at once. You have the ability to slowly go back and change that memory and put it away so that it doesn't haunt you anymore. Thanks for listening. You can contact me at joeryan.com. Follow me on Instagram at joeryan. And if you want, you can leave us a review on iTunes. That'd be great. All right, take care.